to yet another of our webinars from Essex County Cricket in the community. Shame that we're not outside enjoying this lovely weather that's been there, but hopefully we will educate you a little bit more on some of the facets of the game. Delighted tonight that we can welcome again Stuart Kerrison, head groundsman at Essex, and also Jamie Foyster making his debut, who's chairman of the Essex County Groundsman Association, and they will hopefully take you through the next half an hour. Just to remind everybody that you are muted. If you've got some questions, and we certainly hope you'll give these guys a couple of tricky questions, please use the chat box, which should be on your screen somewhere. Jot a question down. We have Arfan, as usual, patrolling that area, and he'll wheedle out the good questions or the tough ones, and hopefully we can answer as many of those at the end as possible. If we can't get to answer one of yours, we will endeavour to deal with that outside this meeting. We also extend a massive welcome to our colleagues in other counties around the eastern region, and be assured that if we don't answer a question for you, that your colleagues or my colleagues of the same sort of roles are listening in and will try and help you as well. But without any further ado, I'll hand over to Stuart. Need to unmute, Stuart.
There you go. Are we on? We're in. Right. Okay. Well, welcome to everyone. Welcome to my office and our tea room at the county ground. Excuse the mess. It's the maid's day off today. But I hope you're enjoying the sunshine, but we could do with a little bit of rain. That would be good. The aim of this is to help and advise, and generally point in the right direction. Groundies from all aspects of cricket across the region now we're looking at. Whether they've been doing it since lockdown, which there's one or two who have just started up, or people have been doing it for many years. There's a few old faces I can see there. We're not trying to teach people how to suck eggs, but, the information is for all levels. So if you've heard a lot of it before, then just bear with us. There may be something that you'll find interesting in it. There's been some recent announcements from the ECB and the government. Have left a lot of people unsure about where they are and what they're doing. We're still waiting for a little bit of clarification on that. We can't help you too much with that, but there are certain tasks that we need to be looking to be doing before any season really gets underway, and where you want to be at this time of the year. So that's where we're going to go to start with, and then a bit later on, Jamie's going to come in. He'll give some advice about pitch preparation. Jamie works in a lot of local clubs around the circuit, around Essex. He's got a vast amount of experience, and it's probably better for him to give you that advice about pitch preparation than me, because we're working with different machinery and at different levels of the game there. So getting on to where we should be, at the last seminar we had, there was a heavy emphasis on scarification and verti cutting. Hopefully everyone's been able to do some regular scarifying and verti cutting. Every 3 or 4 weeks on the ryegrass swards that we have on cricket squares is where you want to be. If you've had that carried out, then you should be in a good spot for pitch preparation if and when needed. We don't know whether we're going to be just doing nets or match play or what. Where are we? Hold on. Okay, yeah. So the other thing with the scarifying is that we will be having end of season discussions, at the end of this seminar, at the end of this webinar, and the scarifying that we do now will have a knock-on effect to that as well. Okay, so really where we want to be is you've done the scarifying, hopefully on top of that. If you haven't been able to do any scarifying because people have been furloughed, people need to get on and do some of that now. By scarifying, we're talking about not going into the surface, but just removal of the dead organic material out the surfaces. Don't just go one way all the time. Try and vary your directions. If it's possible, do a Union Jack over the course of a few weeks. That gets it out where it lays down and lays down in different directions. If you've got a machine that can do it, fantastic. If not, it's going to be hard work with a rake and be a back-breaking day you're going to have on the square. That's our main focus at the moment, because we're not preparing pitches, is to get the scarifying and get that thatch control. The rain we had last week, I think most of us got that. We had 45 mil here, which was most welcome. Hopefully you got quite a bit of that into your profile. We was we managed to get on and do a roll after that. We took a core out to see how much moisture it got into depth. The top 3 or 4 inches had a certain amount of moisture in, which we was looking for. So we was able to do a cross roll just to try and give us that little bit of consolidation. We want to make sure that we've got a base to work from for the rest of the season. I don't know how many people have been able to do pre-season rolling. We had a very wet February, so a lot of people wouldn't have started until March. Then we're getting into the very dry spell. If you're furloughed, you might have missed the boat. So you'll need to be aware of that. Look at taking cores. You can do that even with a knife up the side of a pitch. Just take a little triangle out. If you can get in 3 or 4 inches, brilliant. That will give you a really good indication about where you want to be with your rolling. It'll show you what compaction you've got through the profile, whether you've got root development, any layering, any root breaks. And also you'll be able to see if there's any thatch creeping into the top of the profile. Like I say, if you do cross rolling, that won't be any problem because the soil is not going to be that amenable that you're going to leave ridges or anything like that. And all of your pitch preparation rolling will be along the line of play. So that will take care of any issues that you have with any slight ridging like that. So we've got thatch control. We've got a little bit of rolling done there. Height of cut. If you're not playing on your square, you should be looking at anywhere between 15 and 20 mil. The outfield should be cut at between 20 and 25. We're just starting to work ours down. We've got nets next Monday starting, so we're just starting to work ours down to give us a little bit more ball roll. But I'm still cutting at 17 mil. I'm trying to keep it as long as possible in this hot, dry weather to give us grass coverage to make sure that we don't die off before the season's even started. So they're the sort of things. If you've got control over the height of cut on your fields, I know a lot of people don't with council fields, but anything that they can do to give it a nip would give it a form of control, and it'd help thicken up the sward to give you that protection for dry weather. Where else are we? Hold on, they're through there. Yeah, always check for the moisture first with the rolling. And if you've got into those sort of stages, the other things that you should be looking at on a regular basis, probably anyway, would be any debris that's laying on the field, get on the square, any pests that you've got there, if you've got, whether they're animal or human pests, any damage they've done, you want to do repair work for those. Any sign of disease. Red thread's been quite prevalent just recently, so that's really just a lack of feed on it. So what we need to do is you want to look at putting a little bit of N on it. Don't put too much down because you don't want a massive flush of growth, which could add to your thatch issues and also more and more cutting. But it's just getting the balance right between too much and not enough, okay? What else would we be looking at? Hold on, where's my list? Yeah, so we'd be looking at disease control, pest. I think that, to be honest with you, if you've done all those things, you shouldn't be a million miles away from getting ready for the start of the season. You're almost looking at doing your pre-season stuff this time of the year. But obviously, watering, if you can get a lot of water in one spell rather than do it lots of bits and pieces, that will help with control of meadowgrass. But like I say, everyone has a different situation. So I think if we can try and get heavy water on overnight, one night a week, that will give you enough control for the rest of the week, hopefully. Although if it's 30 odd degrees, you're almost having a wee into the wind sort of thing. So so from my point of view, I think that's where everyone should really try and hopefully be for the start of the season. I think now we'll hand over to Jamie to do his bit on pitch preparation, and then I'll be back for some renos later on. Okay.
Cheers, Stu. Hope you can all hear me. I hope you're all having a cold one after today. I know I melted on the roller this afternoon. Just a few thought provokers. That's all it is. Again, like Stuart said, without teaching you how to suck eggs. This is the longest pre-season ever. The film Groundhog Day. Well, I think this is the cricket version. It's like the alarm goes off every morning. Thankfully, it's not the same bloody tune playing, but it feels like it. So don't we start prepping a pitch at the moment? That's been the frustration for me over the last week or so. Is it the 4th of July? Isn't it? We still don't know. So all we can do, as Stuart said, is just be ready. So being ready both square, but also equipment-wise. We're focusing on your square at the moment and your outfields, but what about your equipment as well? Are your pitch mowers ready to go? We've been cutting our squares with our Matadors and Dennises and whatever else you've got. But is your Surtees or your Dennis or whatever else machine, is that ready? Or is that covered in cobwebs in the garage and you haven't even touched it yet? Are your covers cleaned and set up to go? I know up at High Roading, they put them all together sort of the last couple of days, so they're ready because there might be a few storms in the next few days. Probably won't be, but you never know. Has your roller been taken out of furlough yet? Just a question. Or is it again covered in cobwebs and you might get it out to the square and you might break down in the middle of a pitch if you haven't given it a good check over and check the oil and just the basics. So it's worth just doing those things to avoid that embarrassment. For those with practice pitches already, you know your pitch mower is working all right, so that's good. But for those of you who haven't, get it out, give it a good test and tune up, check the height of cut, the bottom blades, check your spark plug. If it looks dodgy, put a new one in. It's only £2.50, £3. It's worth that attention now. I know you might have done it back in March time. Some of you might not have done, but it's worth that extra time. So about your square, as Stuart said, moisture levels. Well, that rain was nice last week, but out on the squares this afternoon, you wouldn't know we'd had it other than the little green up to the tip of the grass. It's still very dry in the base of the grass. So just where budgets and water pressure allows, get as much water on as you can. And don't do it just for like half an hour because you'll do more harm than good. Get plenty on. If it is a constraint or a low water pressure, 3 of my grounds, I can pee quicker. So I have to use a lay flat hose up in the middle of an individual pitch, and I have to prioritise and think well, what's my next couple of pitches that I'm going to think to prepare, and I just keep them soaked so that when I come to start preparing it, it's not like watering the car park and trying to get water into it, which takes ages. And you end up sort of, you can roll it off more or less. So if budgets allow, like Stuart says, get your hoses on and keep that moisture in because we don't know when the next rain's coming. I can't see any coming for the next couple of weeks anyway. Squares that didn't have any pre-season rolling, as Stuart said, some of you jumped on after last week. I'm looking at some of mine, certainly up at High Roading this afternoon. I wouldn't be rolling that one, but some of you might do. Some of them sit more moist than others. You know your squares, we don't. Again, if in doubt, dig a hole, have a look at your moisture level. But if not, get your flat hoses out, get some water in on your individual pitches or the whole square, and then you'll be able to do some cross-rolling, as Stu says. Covers. A lot of people think, well, why do we need covers when it's 30 degrees? Well, keep your moisture in your square or in your next pitch is a good one. And if you're starting pitch prep and you want to stop that moisture drying out too quickly, use your covers. Most of you have heard the phrase of capping off. There's a couple of reasons why you might have slow pitches. Yes, the thatch level, but if you cap a pitch off, that could create a slow pitch. This is where the top sort of ½ inch or so will go hard, but you've trapped loads of moisture in underneath. And that's because the top's dried off too quick, especially in 30 degrees. So use your covers to try and stop that happening, whether it be a flat sheet overnight, your roll-ons are perfect for that, but use your covers as like a sun hat, if you like, to stop that happening, because it's very easy to happen. First cut, try not to shave all your grass right down to 4 or 5 mil with your first cut, especially in this weather, because it will scream at you. It will not like you. And by the time you get 10 days later, it'll probably be dead. But it will not thank you for it. Try and leave a good 8 to 10 mil on with your first cut, and then you're raking in, you're brushing, plenty of brushing between your brushing, cutting and rolling, just to wilt it slowly over your 10, 14 day prep, just to get it ready, and then take that height of cut down towards the end, coming up to match day. But especially with these temps at the moment, try and leave that little bit of length in so it'll absorb your moisture in uniformly across your pitch. The other thing I would say is you're not alone with this, especially the further south you go, the concentration of clubs is massive. You know, so yeah, we've got the Essex Ground Support Network, us 5 guys, we can come out and help. We're doing this webinar, but we've got our Twitter and Facebook pages, but there's plenty of opportunity. Pick up the phone, drive up the road, speak to your mates up the road. You're not alone. It is a weird situation. As I said, the longest pre-season ever, but it's not just you out in your ground. It can be a lonely job at times, especially at the moment. And it's those of you who usually have people help you, haven't at the moment. You've been on your own for the last sort of 14, 15 weeks. get out and speak to people, give them a ring, have a chat. You soon find everybody's got the same issues at the moment. Meadow grass and everywhere is too dry. So, just use the network, and, there's like 30, 40 people on here. So the knowledge is in the counties, so just use everybody. Okay. I think that's about all I was going to say on pitch prep, Stu. Just the main thought provoking.
Okay, just about the ground support network, how can we get in contact with them?
Right, if you give Graham Pryke a ring, and then depending on where you are in the county, the 5 of us are spread geographically. He'll then sort of tip one of us off, and then we'll get in touch with you and then have a chat, and then probably come out and visit and have a look. And that's the quickest way of doing it.
All right. I mean, there's a lot of good information out there on the internet. The GMA, the old IOG, they've got a lot of good stuff. The ECB have got some good videos on there, the old Chris Wood ones, and the TS4 document, which whenever I go out and look at ground or talk to groundsmen, I always put them over onto the TS4 document. It's a little bit dated now, but it's only a few years out of date, and that will be updated now. Andy Mack has took over doing Chris's role. So these guys are there, but the ground support network is all local guys who understand the situation that most of you guys would be in as well. So they're there to be used. So, it'd be great to make use of them. End of season renovations. Now, it's been a bit of a talking point amongst a lot of people whether they need to do it because they haven't played on the grounds and this sort of thing. A lot of it depends on the usage. Finances is a big part of it now, and the possible even finish dates. We could be playing in October for all we know. But some form of renos will need to be carried out. This could range from a simple top-up of Scarify that you've been doing during the season to a full-blown renovation, depending upon what your issues are with your grounds. A light overseed, it might be a complete reseed. A light dressing could be a heavy dressing. You could be putting 2 or 3 inches back on a renovation. So there's all these things to think about and to start planning. Each ground will be different and require a specific program of work, which you can only really, it's only dictated by the thatch control, what thatch you've got in the surface, a soil analysis, whether it's people like Jamie or his guys coming out and doing an analysis for you, your surface levels, the usage you have, and probably most important this year is going to be finances. Okay, but the thatch control is vital at the end of the season to give you a clean surface to set up for the following season. A layer of thatch and weedy, clumpy grass is not a good starting point for the following season. You'll have slow, low pitches. You can have uneven pitches. So we want to get that under control before the season ends. Well, before the season starts again anew next year. You want to be looking at your top dressings. Make sure you can get your dressings in. Make sure there's enough out there. I heard a rumour the other day from a rep that grass seed might be a little bit of a premium because the production of grass seed's been knocked. So we want to start looking at getting the planning in place to get your grass seed in, get your loams in. A lot of us use binders up the road here at Ongar. Frank there will need to know as soon as what soil that people require. He's got 2 massive shedfuls of soil, but he will, it could run out, or we don't want to be in that situation. Sorry, I lost my place there a minute. Okay, so in the season renos, depending on what you want to do, you need to be looking at getting that thatch control. That is the absolute most important thing for you. Your soil analysis will tell you whether you've got any layering or root breaks, which you may need to deal with another mechanical, whether it's aeration or other methods. Overseeding. Get the seed into the soil. Last year, we see an awful lot of washout from grounds that just chucked seed on top of the soil. It wasn't put into the ground, and a lot of it washed out because it turned very wet as soon as the season finished almost last year. A general rule of thumb is the length of the seed is how deep it wants to be in the soil. So the dwarf perennial rise that we pretty much all use on the ground, they're about 4 or 5 mil long. So you want to be 4 or 5 mil into the ground. That gives you seed soil contact. It keeps moisture around the seed. And then you just need a light dressing over the top of that just to make sure that the hole's filled in, any undulations or any unevenness is covered. if you feel that you need to put a heavier covering of soil down because you've really ripped into it this season to get rid of a lot of the thatch and you've disturbed soil levels and stuff like that, do a light dressing after the overseeding first, and then come back to it 3 or 4 weeks down the line and do another light dressing rather than smother the soil in one hit. Where you're burying the soil, it's going to take a long time for the seed to come through. You're creating a problem under the surface with possibly another thatch layer, with the soil, the debris being buried under the soil. It's better to do it in 2 smaller levels. If you can get a dry day in end of October, that is, which is always an issue. So they're little things that you need to be thinking about before you're planning your end of season renovations. Always ask yourself why. That to me, that's the most important question for a groundsman. It's not just for young kids to say why. Ask yourself why. Why are you doing this? Why are you aerating? Why are you taking 1 pass with a Scarify? Why aren't you doing 4 passes with a Scarify? What are you trying to achieve? Just keep asking yourself that question. Don't just do things because that's how things have always done in the past. If you really want to affect change, you have to start thinking about it and start asking those questions as to why you're doing those tasks. If you've got your renovations done, your seed and soil in, and your grass is up, a feed is always obviously advisable if it's a viable prospect for finances. A pre-seeder will give you a good start and get the grass up and running and help to strengthen it for the oncoming winter. A feed during the winter is always good, but obviously everyone has got different budgets, so you might need to look at that nearer the time. I think planning is a major part of it. And now, where are we now? The end of June. We should all have in place how much soil we're going to need, how much seed we're going to need, who's going to do the job, what machinery you're going to do, you're going to need, because that'll all get booked up pretty quickly this year. If you're not playing this year, it would be great if you could use the facility for nets or for practice matches amongst yourself, if that's allowed, obviously following the guidelines. But if you've not had a full league season on it, you're still going to need to do something on it. But you could do that earlier in the season. You could do that in September. It's no point doing it now because everything's just going to shrivel up and die and you'll spend all your money on water. If you do it in September, there's moisture about, there's heavy dews in the morning, and even that's enough sometimes just to help the grass just to kick on. You've got more chance of retaining that moisture in the ground. And you've got pretty much a month. By the end of October, that grass will be up and you'll be giving it, you'd have had 2 or 3 cuts on it maybe by then. So from my ideas and the way I look at it, it would be get the planning sorted out, work out what you want to do, and get on with it, really. So I think for us, what's the time now? It's 24 minutes past. So from us, I think that's where we want to be. Graham, we'll hand over to you. We're doing Q&As.
Yep, you're not getting away with it that easily, I'm sure, boys. But thank you very much so far. I would just echo a couple of little points before we go to Q&A, and that is that for clubs that have never really done end-of-season work before and with finances stretched this year, have a chat with your neighbours. Have a chat with us as an organisation. Is there some way that perhaps somebody like Jamie or whoever's coming out to do end-of-season work around the county could stretch and do 2 or 3 clubs in a day? I'm sure those guys would like to do that. It makes a lot more sense. So again, for goodness sake, have those questions, or if you're not comfortable dealing with a neighbour because they're your adversary or whatever, then come through us, because at the end of the day, it will make sense to have the work carried out. And if we can cut that cost for you by the travel and things like that, it makes sense. And again, even when it comes to ordering loam and stuff like that, anything where we can get deliveries sort of centrally and things like that. So again, if you need to use the organisation, Paul Elby, who I'm not sure is on the call today, he's secretary of the association, who's always keen to sort of try and help as well as us that are on the call. And to that end, if there's anyone listening to this call, particularly in Essex, and you're not on the mailing list for the Groundsman Association, please drop me a line and I'll make sure I get you added to Paul Elby. He does put out a brilliant newsletter and keep the guys in contact with what the latest sort of moves are in the county and around the country. It's well worth being involved in that. So please, get the word out. And maybe if you're listening to this call and you're not ordinarily a groundsman, get yourself added to it. And the only other thing I was going to just mention as well, we're hoping, and again, this is very much dependent on the virus and where it is, but come October, we're going to have a maintenance day down at Writtle College. Be very limited spaces, but I'm just giving you a heads up that if all goes to plan, we will still try and do that, and more news will come out about that later on. So come on, Arfan, give them some filth, please.
Okay, we've got two on the chat, so I'll throw the first one to Jamie and second one to Stu. From Nadine, the first one for you, Jamie. Redbridge Cricket Club have been watering rolling with a minimum cut on the square. Is this okay?
Yeah, as Stuart said, providing the moisture levels are enough on your square, then it will be fine to roll. If you want to check, then get a knife and cut a small block out down to a few inches deep, just to check what moisture you've got in that top profile. Because what you don't want to be doing is rolling on dry profile, because you can damage your roots and create problems with that. So yeah, if you've been watering lots, obviously let it soak in and don't roll it when it's waterlogged, because again, you can do damage, you can ripple your surface. But I think at the moment, to be honest, looking out on squares today, all of mine had pre-season rolling in March, but the rain last week enabled us to do a little bit of rolling. But I would be more sort of concentrating on sort of just getting some water and keeping your grass healthy at the moment, not cutting it too short. And then when it comes to pitch prep, providing you can get sufficient water into that pitch, if you haven't had much pre-season rolling, just allow a few extra days, even an extra week for pitch prep. Do a pitch prep over a good 2.5 weeks, and you'll get enough rolling in. It'll be fine.
Brilliant. Cheers, Jamie. Stu, over to you, mate. From Paul Jackson. As we are unlikely to use all the pitches on the square, when we are out of the drought, would it be sensible to do a more aggressive verticut Scarify, i.e. breaking the surface on those pitches that will not be used?
Well, if Paul's not going to be using them up at Badder, then if he's certain that he's not going to be using them, then he could go in more aggressively, because he could do the same amount that he would go if he's going in 4 or 5 mil at the end of the season. It's no problem doing that this time of the year, because it'll give him a bit more control. But he just needs to be careful that he don't go too mad on it and leave himself with a Finis Ward, which is not helping to retain moisture in the ground. The grass coverage we've got, I think most of us have got a pretty good grass coverage. The grass has been growing vigorously, shall we say. It's created some problems with meadow grass, with the weed grasses, and also thatch as well, which has been an issue. But I think you just need to be a little bit careful. If you start seeing soil between the grass, that'll be time to slow up a little bit then and let it grow a little bit more.
Brilliant, Stu. Just one from me. You sort of touched on, the potential chance of clubs playing into October, depending on their agreements and whatnot. Hypothetically, if we are able to place club cricket from July, let's say, and we do go into October, is there, in your opinion, a cut-off date, maybe a sort of temperature sort of minimum, so at least some end of season work can be done? It's a double question. And the next part is, if we do play for that long, is there any different recommendation for pre-season the following year?
Well, not knowing what the weather's going to be like in October, we could have frosts in October, in early October, which could put you back for your, if the weather turned cold, we could be struggling. Usually the soil temperatures are up all the way through October, so your renovations, you can carry on. I mean, Jamie will be able to tell you that, there's people wanting renovations in November last year, I think it was, and, the weather we had was awful. But I think there's no harm in playing in October. Clocks go back, the 21st of October, so it's very dark in the evenings, so you won't have time to get games in. Light's probably your biggest issue. We've talked about this at the first class level, and our opinion is, we're here to play cricket. If they wanted to play until December, we'd make every effort to play until December, and we'd deal with the consequences of the following season. What clubs have to be wary of, and leagues as well, is that obviously if there is a knock-on effect to the following season, You know, don't start too early. If you start in the middle of April, don't be looking about friendlies in March like we do at county level if we're playing through until the middle of October. You know, give people a chance, you know. So I would say there's no problem with going into the second week in October, but have your renovations in place and your plans all ready to go as soon as you're done.
Brilliant. Jamie, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, we all normally, don't laugh at that word, my cut-off is usually around 10th, 15th of October. But last year, you'll remember, October went wet around about the 10th, and we had one job. Typically, we had one job left, which didn't get done. We had to wait 2 weeks, and it was done on the 24th of October. But interestingly, it took a lot longer to get going because of the temperatures dropping, but it got there in the end. And come this spring, you wouldn't have known the difference. But it was about getting it done in the right. It's about getting it done in the right conditions. So if it means waiting a few extra days for it to dry or what have you, that's what it's all about. If you do it in the wrong conditions, like Stu said earlier, a lot of people just put seed on hard surfaces, didn't get it into the ground, and last winter seed just washed, and there was lots of bare area, and people wondered why. But that was the reason.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jamie, Stu. That was really insightful once again. Graham, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys. Absolutely brilliant. And I think for everyone listening, urge you to communicate with your groundsman. You are the groundsman, probably listening in here more, but chat to the clubs about the reality of playing late in the season, because I know that the contractors like to move in and have a set number of grounds to get round. They can't do everyone on the second week of October. It's just not practical. So it won't be the same for everyone. I hope everyone's enjoyed tonight. Fabulous contributions, boys. Next week, just to say, there'll be more webinars with Take Ball on Tuesday, which is always an interesting topic. And on Thursday, we've got safeguarding. So I hope that many of you will join us for those. Thank you for tonight. Stay safe and keep waiting. We might get some news soon.